Okay, so my curiosity about doing things in Scenekit where you can actually, use 3D systems to display objects and rotate around them and change where they're at and things like that got the better of me. And so I decided to go ahead and look up how to do it in, using Scenekit with swiftui. And seeing as how swiftui is so new, that is kind of a little difficult thing to do because not everything works in swiftui yet. However, one of the biggest things that I discovered that was not working was the fact that you could not do hit testing. And so what I found out is that after searching and searching for a way to do this the right way, is that there is no real right way to do it other than using what we're calling a UI view representable, where we actually use a UI kit class in order to get a scene view, which will actually conform to the SK scene renderer delegate. And once you have that, then you can actually use your hit testing in swiftui. And so let's see, I think I can actually share more than one screen at a time here, right? Share two. I don't know what that looks like to you. But can you see the hit test app?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So with the knowledge that I needed to be able to do hit testing in order to do things like clicking on something to get a selection, I went ahead and found out how to do the hit testing with the scene delegate, or scene, what do you call it, scene view, UI kit represent. Let's see. So here I create that struct, the Scenekit view and its view representable. And the only thing this does in here is to create the scene, the view, well, actually the view for the scene, attach the scene to it, and then return it. It's also got a coordinator, the update, which I don't do anything in the update here because I do everything updated in the actual swiftui. The coordinator itself, which is, I just kind of ignore it because it works. So what it is, I actually found how somebody else had done it, and they had an NS view representable for their Scenekit view, and it was huge. They did everything in there. They did their hit testing in there. They set up their scene, and I really didn't want to do that. I just wanted something that was as minimal as possible so that when Scenekit actually works properly in swiftui, that I could just remove this and start using a scene view that is actually built into swiftui. So at some point I'll be removing this, but for right now, this is a representation of how you can actually do it. And so when we actually create the view here, I have various variables here, scene view, the scene itself, a couple of nodes for the camera. I'll explain that in a few minutes. A status text, which I don't actually use anymore. I don't think I do anyways, but and a target node, which is the target for when you click on something or double click, which is a separate object from the one that you're actually rotating around. So in here on appear, when this view appears, first thing we're going to do is set up the Scenekit view so that we actually have that. And we're going to set the scene to it. The scene is actually created here when I declare it. And then I set up the camera nodes. The camera is interesting because this is actually a separate issue in that you see how I can actually center the object and I will rotate around it. This is something of a trick that you just kind of learn in that you actually have to have two nodes. You have to have a node that I call camera orbit that is actually set so that its position is the same position as the object you want to orbit around. And then the camera node itself is actually a child node of the camera orbit node. And that node, the camera node, has a what do you call it? It has a look at constraint so that it is always looking at the object you are orbiting around. So here I set up the camera node, just basic camera, automatically adjust the Z range, set the look at constraint, set the position so that it's like 40 Z units away from the object you're going to orbit around, and return it. Then I use that when I call the setup camera, I use that node and the scene, and I set the camera orbit Euler angles because that's going to, this sets your initial Euler angle. And the Euler angles for the X and the Y are the only ones I really use. That gives you the ability to do things like the orbit around. You can limit it so that you actually orbit in the X axis or the Y axis one at a time. If you want to do that, I'm just using X for setup right now, just so that it's not, I wanted to set it so that it's not one on top of the other. At any rate, then I add the orbit to the orbit camera orbit node to the root node and return. And so then, of course, I set up the background black, and then I add the two spheres. When you're adding spheres, it's pretty, it's just a matter of creating a couple of spheres, which I don't know if you've ever used Scenekit. First thing you have to do is create a geometry. In this case, it's just SCN sphere, and I set a radius of 1. And then I set that geometry, I create a SCN node with that geometry, call it a sphere. And then I'm adding, let's see, the position, which is just 0, 0, 0. And technically I don't need to do this part here, but it's there. Setting the ball color to yellow for the first one and red for the second one. When I come through here on this loop, positions 0, 0, 0. Diffuse. Oh, and here we go. The colors themselves are interesting because in this Scenekit, you have two different kinds of color. You have the diffuse color, which is a color that the object will have if you have external lighting and well, lighting from the environment itself as opposed to something being emitted from the object. But the object can also have emitted color, which in this case I set them to the same thing because it doesn't matter. I just want it to be able to glow. And I'm just setting a name there. That becomes important when you do other things with these nodes, but not right now. Then add the child nodes. And so once I've got those things in there, you can actually rotate around. You can click on the other ones to select them. In this app here, it's really simple that if you click on one of the objects, you'll get the selected sphere text up here. But if you click on the background, you get nothing. And so the other thing is that when you're working with the Scenekit and the Scenekit view, the scene view, you can't use the tap gesture that is a modifier for the view. And so you have to use simultaneous gestures in order to get drag gesture, for instance, which is used for rotating or orbiting around the object, changing the Euler angles down here so that you can actually get the rotation that you want. Also, when you do a single click, this one here is the single click, which is a drag gesture, because there is no tap gesture in the simultaneous gestures. So what you do is you just basically, when it ends, you're going to grab the start location. And the start location is actually generated when you start, but I'm not using that modifier in here, but it's still there nonetheless as a part of the value. And then I go through and I do some modification of that in order to generate the location so that I can actually do a hit test on the scene view and see whether or not I get anything in that return. If it gets something, it's going to return an array. And if you have only one object in the line of sight, it's like casting a ray down straight into that distance there where you're looking, and it will give you an array containing every object that hits with the closest one first. And so I only take the first one. So that's pretty easy. So that's a single click. The only thing I do is I update the status text. Now for a double click, it's a little different in that I'm looking for a count of 2 on that tap gesture. Here a tap gesture will actually work because I don't remember why. Because I'm not actually doing a hit test here. I'm actually doing the hit test for this one here, up here as well. I'm actually, because if the first time you click, this is going to be generated actually. So it's still going to hit this one, and then it's going to hit this one as well on the second click. So using that hit test, using the status text in this case, I'm looking up the child node with the status text, which just holds the name of the object. And then I'm setting the target position to the position of the target node that was returned. And then down here, this is the part where I gently move the view onto the other object. And that's just an animation where you do an SCN transaction begin and commit, and everything in between there will give you your animation, your duration, the position you want to move to, and the look at constraint in this case. And then I just set the target node and the status text, and I'm done. And then everything else is just this overlay, which in this case is this up here and this text down here. I don't really do much with it here. I don't have any buttons on this screen. And so this is all very simple swiftui code to define that. And that's pretty much it for that. And this whole thing was because I created this for other people because I know that there were other people having the same issues I was in trying to get some of these things to work with the hit testing. And, going out on the Apple forums was no help. Nobody really knew. And, we were out there for a couple of years trying to get this to work with nobody responding. So when I figured out how to get this working with a minimal scene view, I went ahead and posted in those forums to let people know how to do it, and then posted a link to my GitHub repo for where this is. And I think I posted that in chat already. Also, if I go back over here, part of this is because I'm actually working on something else. It's a mapping utility for RPG games. Okay, it's something I do in my spare time, and I've always wanted to do that because I play things like Traveler, and they have 2-dimensional hex maps, and I've never been happy with hex maps, so I wanted to do something else. And there is a big hex map online. It's called the travelermap.com, and it's really cool, and it has this huge official Traveler map, but it's still in hexes. And so what I have instead, let me change my screen sharing. I have one of these little apps. So this one here is an app that just displays, a star field. In this case, this is coming from a database on Winchell Chung's website that he created from various other sources. And this is like basically the 100, these are the stars within 25 parsecs at this point. And so the duplicates, if there's more than one star in a system, they're generally been cleared out so that there's only a single item for each star system. So it's not that realistic, but it's useful if you want to see where things are. So if I go in here to go to Sol, we're at the center of the map, of course, you can see the closest stars to us, the Centaurus system here, Proxima and Rachel Centaurus A. B is there as well, but it was selected out for deduplication purposes. So it's pretty neat, but also one of the other things with this database is that it has stars that are known to have planets in the habitable zone. So I can click on the habitable button, and every system that has a planet in the habitable zone becomes green. It's kind of hard to tell though, because see, one of the things I might want to work out is that these non-habitable stars are still white. And I really need to set them to like gray or something, which I have not done yet. So that's, of course, I have these buttons here as well, which I did not have in the demo, the other demo. I can turn the scale off and on. I can bring the instructions back up. This is all swiftui, of course. And this is just the basic information about the star itself, its coordinates in parsecs, based on Sol with the galactic coordinates, meaning that the axis, the x-axis points, the 0 on the x-axis points to the galactic center. And we've got the stellar class here, which is K5 in this case. Sol would be a G25 or G2V. So that's pretty much it. That's all I've got. That's pretty neat. And so there you go.
Nice. Well, that was a little bit over. I'm not going to be as nice to the next person.
Sorry.
Eric's my favorite. So do you want to open up to questions? Does anyone have any questions or anything like that? Or
Sure, I can ask a few questions.
Good.
I just have a quick note on your architecture, because it looks like you're writing UIKit in swiftui, and you probably want to avoid doing that. So for all of the property wrappers, the at state, you don't want to put reference types in there. And all of the Scenekit types are reference types. And so what you really want to do is put in a view model and hoist all of the logic into the view model, have the view model vend the SCN scene, and then just init your swiftui scene by using that SCN scene. And then you can take all the construction logic out of it.
Right. Okay. That's good. Thanks. Any other questions?
Have you thought about doing an AR kit?
I have, but I'm really not that interested until we actually have AR glasses.
Makes sense.
So
no, that'd be cool. I always like when you do something in Scenekit that you can just kind of pull it out and present it in AR.
Yeah. If you write it correctly, I think you can do that. I haven't done much with AR kit other than the demos, but it'll be really cool. But I really don't feel like holding a phone around or an iPad to do it yet.
Yeah. No, I feel
but I do have ideas for using this that way. Yeah.
All right, cool. Any other questions? Otherwise, Elliot, are you ready?
Yeah, sure.